Okay, so today we have a special guest, Sydney Sloan, who comes from Seattle Children, and she will kind of let us know about her career and her pathway on getting there. So, Sydney, could you just kind of introduce yourself, maybe your job title, where you're from, stuff like that?
Sure. Hello, hello. So my name is Sydney Sloan. My job title now is Informatics Nurse Specialist.
Mm,
I am originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I found
wow.
my way out to Seattle via travel nursing, ironically. And I've been in the Seattle Pacific Northwest area since 2016. And in my years here, I started off as a bedside nurse.
Mm,
At Seattle Children's and Swedish. And then once I got my master's degree in nursing informatics, I transitioned into my role now, which is an informatics nurse specialist
okay.
at Seattle Children's.
Wow. So you have really kind of had a variety of careers and all
hmm
parts of the US. So this is very exciting. um, I imagine that there is quite a bit of education, that goes behind towards getting to where you are now. And could you just elaborate on your educational background a bit?
Yes. So I started off with my BS and my bachelor's of science in nursing, and I worked as a registered nurse at the bedside at a children's hospital in Cincinnati for about 3.5 years. At that point, I always knew that I wanted to be in, have an advanced degree within nursing. I just
Mm,
wasn't sure if I wanted to go down the administrative, like a manager track or an
mm,
educator track. And at
right.
the hospital that I was working at, they had a cohort that offered a select number of nurses, if you applied and got in, to go to a graduate program for nursing informatics. And the more research that I did on nursing informatics, I thought to myself, this would be a great field because I'll be able to utilize my clinical skills, learn a few IT skills, and then it kind of opens up another avenue of opportunities for me,
Mm,
similar to how it was when I got my bachelor's degree. So I applied for the program at the hospital. I did not get in, but I got into the graduate program. And so I completed that. That was about 2.5 years. And then I've been working in my role ever since. So I kind of it wasn't too much schooling, if you will. I had my traditional BSN track for about 4.5 years, and then I went to graduate school for another 2.5, 3 years over this period. So, and then within that, through my job, I attend some conferences that are
mm.
educational, as well as going to do certain trainings as well, which is always really fun to just be able to keep flexing that muscle of my critical thinking in my brain and making sure that I am abreast of my skills and learning new ones because I love learning new things.
That's awesome. And you have a master's degree and you say not too much schooling. So it really kind of shows how much you love to learn, Sydney. So is that so from you graduated high school and you went straight to college, got your BSN, got a
hmm
job as a nurse, and then you got another master's degree, which I'm assuming while you were working, and then you
Yes.
went to the, okay,
Yes, I
gotcha.
attended an online program, which allowed me. So, a few things happened. This is all in 2015. I decided that I wanted to go to graduate school. I also decided that I wanted to be a travel nurse at the same time. And so, when I didn't get into the cohort at my hospital, I pursued traveling full time and I was able to attend graduate school online. So, that enabled me to have a lot of flexibility in my schedule and still be able to travel around the country as a travel nurse as I wanted. So, I got the best of both worlds. I got to travel and also receive my education and not feel limited.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds like fun and stimulating. Um,
hmm
I'm curious. You kind of said that you always knew that you wanted to be a nurse. And was there like a point that made you realize that, or was there a culmination of points? And also similarly, like when did you realize that you wanted to go into that IT side?
So when I started school, I originally wanted to be a pediatrician. I've always loved working with children, and I thought being a pediatrician would be the best route. But as I was going through my prerequisites before the nursing program, I realized that nurses had a lot more contact with the patients and got to really know the patients on a much more intimate level than the providers did. The providers still are able to get to know their patients, but the nurses are there day in and day out, acting on the orders of the providers. And so that's what really spoke to me. I wanted to be able to be able to be helpful and to be caring. That's part of my nature. But I also wanted to not feel so bogged down with a large patient load and doing all
Mm,
the things that providers do. So nursing was really the best of both worlds, and I really enjoyed that. And when I became a nurse, I joined what's called the float pool. So I worked all over the hospital, and I did that because I wanted to learn which specialty or which area really spoke to me the most. Turns out they all spoke to me. I like them all. I like variety. Um, but as I was working as a bedside nurse and we're using the
mhm,
electronic medical record, I realized that I would see pieces of technology or documentation, and I always thought to myself, this could be better. Like this, we could streamline this. We can make this more efficient, so the nurses don't feel like they're kind of tied to the computer and not able to spend time with their patients. And
mm,
that's when I discovered nursing informatics. And in that role, you're like a middle person between the clinicians and IT. So
mm,
as a bedside nurse, you learn to advocate for your patients and your families and their needs. And you're kind of the middle person between the care team and the patients and families. As an informaticist, I am that advocate for the bedside staff. So I
mm,
went from advocating for patients to advocating for my colleagues, the bedside nurses, and ensuring that what they have in the system allows them to safely document and provide quality patient care without feeling burdened by the amount of documentation. And so that is what really sparked my interest in working in informatics and IT. And so in my role today, I get to do that. I get to
right.
attend meetings with different nurse leaders and leaders around the organization about IT related projects. And my role is to ensure that whatever we're deciding doesn't have any kind of negative impact to the bedside staff. That includes nurses, our CNAs, our RTs, our social workers, all of our staff on the patient's care team. We want to ensure that we're giving the highest quality care that we possibly can without having a burden or an inequitable workload on certain disciplines.
Wow, that is a lot there, the variety of
Hmm.
careers, and it's great that you kind of found your place of wanting to be the intermediary between all these players, your knack for caring, your knack for efficiency. It's really quite wonderful to hear. And you kind of pointed out about how you're doing these projects where you're the intermediary between your colleagues and the IT side, and could you maybe give us a little bit of an example, like, what you see or think or do on the day? Like, let the high schooler and middle schoolers and us students kind of think about what it's like to be you for a day.
Oh man, to be me, what a whirlwind. So my days have like what I call this varying consistency. I have meetings, I have emails, but a typical day will be where I'll meet with my team. We all update each other on the work that we're doing. We're a small team, but we're very mighty. And so we all are have our little fingers in different pots around the organization. So we like to keep each other updated. Um, just for good teamwork. But otherwise, I'll attend meetings with nurse leaders, so managers, educators, directors, usually about policy and procedure changes. So, for example, CLABSI, it's called a central line bloodstream infection, and it's very important for all hospitals to monitor this and to keep that CLABSI rate, they call it, very low. And so I meet with the leaders quite often to review the data we've been collecting about our rates and how we can reduce the rates via nursing or provider documentation. So a lot of our nurses are the ones that are doing the what we call dressing changes or linen changes, and that all
Mm,
contributes to that CLAPSI rate. So if we can help streamline the documentation where we give them kind of pop-up alerts in the system if they have not completed, say, a linen change within the first 4 hours of their shift, then that week I work with nurse leaders to kind of build that, what it will look like in the system. And then I take that to IT to advocate, speak to, give them kind of use my clinical background to give IT an idea of the context for why this ask is needed. And then I ferry that back on over to my clinical leaders for their approval. And then I work with my clinical partners to develop a implementation rollout plan. So education, go lives, how do we monitor afterwards. So it's kind of like a lot of managing different people and timelines and projects is what I do. I don't necessarily own anything. I just ensure that the folks that are requesting and the folks that are doing the work have what they need to be able to complete their jobs.
Mm,
That's my role
wow.
in
I
a
wouldn't
nutshell.
I'm so grateful that there are people like you that enjoy doing that. And, and why I say that is because I remember as a CNA, we would get like a new system. And for viewers that
Hmm.
don't know, there's a system called Epic, and it kind of helps manage all this documentation. And when that comes to the hospital, it's usually, oh wow, this is great, or like, oh, this is not so great. And
Yes,
as you know,
exactly.
as I listen to you, you are kind of that intermediary once again between your colleagues who have thoughts about this new system and the people that are actually doing it. So really cool. Um, what are some of the attributes that make someone successful in your role? I imagine there's a lot of patience, problem solving, empathy. What do you need to do well?
Oh gosh, I would say, well, the patience, the problem solving, and the empathy are very important. I think it's for me to be successful in my role, I have to be an active listener and I have to actively listen to what the end users, my customers, are requesting from me and how I can translate that to IT in the method that they can understand. The reason why informatics as a field and nursing informatics specifically is so niche and so needed, if I do say so myself, is that our folks in my role have the verbiage to be able to speak to our clinical partners, like translate what IT is saying into clinical language and then translate clinical language into IT language so they all can understand each other better. So being able to listen very well and to reiterate what the actual issue is to both parties is key. Being
Mm,
patient is always going to be key because with changes, change is hard for everyone. And so people take change differently, and you cannot expect everyone to always be happy about a change that maybe you are. I love Epic. I was very excited when our organization transitioned, but it was difficult for some people to accept that. And so I have to learn to accept people where they are and not to try and push them. And once you kind of have that awareness, it's much easier to work with a diverse group of people. When you're kind of open to just people being themselves and learning to meet them where they are on certain issues in order for you to complete your job and to really kind of have a smooth balance within the working world. Because it's very easy to, especially in this role, to kind of get mired in all of the requests and asks. At the basis, we're all nurses. We love to care and to be helpful to people. And so when my end users come to me with issues or that they're having with the documentation, I immediately want to fix it and I want it to be fixed. And I will. It's just going to take some time. And I'm going to also need to, like I said, meet people where they are and work with them at their levels to achieve the ultimate goal. So
mm.
it's a lot of people management and managing change for those folks, having that patience. If you love a good problem, which I do, you might want to strike that from the recording. I don't like problems. I'm just kidding. But I do love being able to dissect a complex issue and just understand it. So the more
Mm,
complex an issue that I am faced with, the more intrigued I am because I want to figure it out. So being inquisitive is something that I think would be a skill that you would definitely need. Um, yeah, and I also think having just a nice, happy, positive disposition about
mm,
most things, which I think I have, helps a lot. When you
yeah.
have a positive energy and you exude that, the people that you work with, no matter who they are going to feel that, and it's going to help create like a nice, more balanced work environment. And so I do get people sometimes that come to me and they're very frustrated and they're very upset. I had an informaticist from an outside organization actually that I had a meeting with that had been frustrated because they were having issues accessing our system to do their work. And I could hear the frustration in this
Mm,
person's voice. And the best thing I did in that meeting was just acknowledge that they're having an issue. And that right there, she was like, I appreciate you just letting
mm.
me speak and hearing what's going on. And I said,
Right.
I'm glad to help. I know how to help you too, but I'm also glad that you were able to kind of decompress a little bit. So we do a lot of that in my role too. You just kind of like listen, let them get that out, and then we can move on to the meat and potatoes, if you will.
Yes, yes. And as
Mm,
you were speaking about, active listening, meeting where they are, and being patient, I had my own realization that the things that you were saying apply to when you're a nurse caring for a patient.
mhm,
And it's just kind of that on a mass scale, but with all kinds of players, it sounds like. So that's
mhm.
really neat. And as you proceed in your job, what are some of the not what are some of the things that folks are interested in pursuing this IT and/or nursing that they should think about that's actually not so great? It's not all roses and butterflies, and these are some just realities to be aware of. But at the
Mhm.
same time, what are some of the joys that kind of trump those difficulties?
Oh, yes. So I'm glad you mentioned this. So nursing informatics and informatics as a field is fairly new. It's only about 30-ish years old. And with a new field, the standards are very fluid. And so within this role, if you are a person that needs to have strict like standards and rules that you follow, this might not be for you just yet. Give it another
Mm.
10 years or so.
Okay.
It's very much you have a wide range of standards and policies and procedures that you follow, but it's really up to the interpretation of the informaticist or the organization that they work for to clearly define their role. So, for
Mm.
example, the informaticists at UW have a different job description and standard than the informaticists at Seattle Children's. And so you're going to see that kind of varying in what informaticists do from organization to organization. That can be frustrating for people who need to have clear, concrete standards on what they're supposed to do. I do
Mm.
this, I do X, Y, and Z, not A, B, and C. So that
Mm.
can be something that's frustrating. You kind of have to be able to be fluid and be flexible and be comfortable working in a gray area sometimes. So that means you could be doing a lot of data analysis, looking for trends and to help improve the quality care that you're giving, or you could be doing a lot of training where you're educating staff members and others about things related to the EHR. You could be writing policies and working with your regulatory and compliance department solely on ensuring that your organization is compliant with the federal regulations. Or you could be doing what I'm doing, which is a lot of liaising and facilitating of communications between different parties. Now, one of the joys of this role is actually one of the downsides is that kind of gray area flexibility, right? Because if you don't mind operating in a loose environment, if you will, you can then shape the role to your benefit or how you want it. So if you are at an organization and they're just trying to develop their informatics team and structure, you're at a critical point where you have a lot of power and control on how the organization views informaticists. So you can make them as important as you want or as diminished as you want. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And if you're a person that can take a lump of clay and mold it into a beautiful sculpture, then informatics is for you. And that's what
Mm.
I like from it is that there's a little bit of gray in that I have a lot of autonomy or independence over how I can decide my future. I could stay at the hospital if I'd like. I could also
Mm.
go work for the government if I wanted to. I could go
Mm.
work in the private sector for certain IT companies if I want. I could be a consultant. I mean, there's so many options, and that's one of the reasons why I chose to become a nurse in the first place is because I could work in pediatrics or oncology or adult care. I could be a traveler. I could work in a hospital. I could work in a clinic. I could do so many different things, and that's the thing that attracted me to nursing informatics. So, if you like the the chance to have the world as your oyster or a vegan oyster, go for it. If you if you like a little more structure and something that has a little more of a foundation developed, I would say that informatics at this time might not be for you. Give it another
Mm.
5 to 10 years. It's a rapidly growing and developing field. So yeah.
It sounds very exciting, Sydney. If someone is willing to kind of put their heads and jump into that chaos and thrives in that chaos, then
Yeah.
um, really you have a lot of options available, it sounds like. So that's very
Mhm.
cool. Um, so now that we've kind of heard about what it's like to be an informatics specialist and kind of your background, I did want to kind of transition into some questions about more about how we kind of get there. And
Okay.
one thing was, so me as an Asian American, there are times when I was in the hospital when I felt, I wonder if he would not have talked to me like that if I were white, for example.
Mm,
Or, and I think the audience that we are trying to reach are individuals that are diverse in race, income, their English speaking abilities. And so I'm curious, if you have ever experienced kind of discrimination as you were going through your journey of becoming a nurse and or informatics specialist, and as only as much as you're willing to share, but and if you have, how did you navigate those challenges? Because I think we really want to equip the next generation with the tools or the best practices that we've kind of gained so they can thrive as well.
mhm. Oh gosh. So, I mean, as a Black woman in healthcare, I've encountered my fair share of uncomfortable situations within the workplace. What I've learned and how to handle these issues is that I am firm in who I am as a person.
Mm,
And so, no matter what an external person does to me, that is not a reflection on me and my character as a person, right? Typically, when these things happen, it's not about you and what you did or your character or your morals or anything like that. It's something very superficial. It's actually not even really about you. It's about the person that's trying to inflict it on you. So once you understand that when you're in these situations, and especially if you're in a situation where you know you have done no wrong, you know that you're simply just standing your ground, having firm boundaries, and demanding respect, that can make some people very, very uncomfortable. But what you have to realize is that you're responsible for the energy that you put out, not how others receive it. So as long as how you're working, what you're saying, what you're working with an energy that is positive, that is geared towards something that benefits the greater good, which being in healthcare, that's what you're doing. You're there
mm,
to benefit the greater good. And so as long as you're doing that and you know you're doing that, no matter what anybody says, it's not going to impact you, right? If you are in a room with a patient and you um, let's say you may suspect some type of abuse, and working in pediatrics, unfortunately we see that quite a bit,
mm,
and you decide that you're going to take some action, and you have a parent or a caregiver or a guardian that is becoming aggressive, either verbally or physically. Well, let's just say verbally. Let's start there. If they're becoming verbally aggressive towards you, just realize that what you're doing is for the greater good. You are not here attacking this person, attacking their character. You're ensuring that your patient, who's your number one priority, is receiving the care that they deserve as your patient, and ensuring that they have a safe environment to your ability, right? And so if you
mhm,
get and you will encounter that. You'll encounter parents, patients, even coworkers that just are having a bad day and they decide to take it out on you. You have to you don't internalize their stuff. Okay, we all have our own things. Focus on the energy that you're putting out, not how it's being received. So, like I said, as long as you are moving with positive intentions in what you're doing and saying and how you're acting, that's going to give you the comfort. You're always going to encounter people that are going to want to project or try and see your joy or your energy, the positive energy that you have, and try and like take it or diminish it in some way. And you just have to be firm within you that I know why I'm here. I know my mission. I know what my values and my beliefs are, and I'm going to stick behind them. And there's nothing that can shake that. But at the same time, we're human, and so there are going to be those moments where something happens at work and it really gets to you, and that's
mm,
okay too. It's okay to just be like, "Dang, today was really rough. What that patient said to me really hurt my feelings, and I am affected by it." That is okay too. We don't want our future nurses and doctors and whomever they are to feel like they have to stuff those feelings inside and not feel them. It's okay to feel them. But just know that as you're feeling them, it's not about you. It's
mm,
mostly about them. And it's not an attack on your person. It's them trying to make themselves feel better by maybe tearing you down a little bit. So It's okay to be upset by those things, but don't let it take over because that's not who you are, especially if you know who you are, you know?
Right, right. Before worrying about the external, always just first know who you are,
Yes.
positive energy, be centered,
Mhm.
and don't try to take it too personally. It sounds like.
Yeah.
And I was just listening
Mhm.
to you, and I was getting inspired and taking notes in my head. So thank you so much.
Deep breathing is great, I must say. Sometimes it's okay to just it stimulates your vagus nerve, which when you attend nursing and or medical school, you'll learn about. And that helps to calm you down.
I see. I
I'm a
see.
nurse at heart. I can't help it.
Yes, vagus nerve for folks that don't know, I think it's the nerve behind your neck, right? Or
Mhm.
yeah, I
Mhm.
think
And it like
so.
travels down. It's like one of the largest nerves in your body, but
Mm.
when you guys get to that point of A and P, you'll learn about it.
Okay, everybody. So if you took anything from that amazing speech, it's the vagus nerve. It's the most important thing.
Yes.
So we're really coming to the end here of this great discussion. And now that a high school student is, or middle school student is interested in kind of pursuing the pathway that you've been on, what kind of things should they be doing? So in high school, student clubs, thinking about college, enrichment programs, do they need to go to college and how do they fund college? And obviously, I'm not asking you to answer all those questions, but maybe from your experience on how you kind of persevered and what options you pursued would be great to hear.
Oh, yes. So I come from like a middle to low income family. And so for me to fund schooling, I had some grants that I applied to during while I was still in high school. So if you have a high school counselor, I would definitely engage them, but also doing some Google searches on different grants that are offered, depending on what specialty you want to go into. For nursing specifically, they have lots of grants for that. And I use grants as well as student loans to fund my undergrad as well as graduate degrees. I also worked full time throughout undergrad and through graduate school. I mean, I had a job since I was 14, so I've
Mm,
always worked. But the one thing that I would say with working and going to school is to try and find a role that will allow you some flexibility. I used to work at a
mm,
hotel when I was in undergrad, and it really worked out for me that I would take class in the mornings and I would work in the evenings and nights. And
mm,
then when I was in graduate school, that was an online program. So, and I would only work 3 12-hour shifts as a bedside nurse. It was really not too difficult for me to manage work and school. I also found a job where I was able to do my homework while I was working. So it
wow.
wasn't that I would work, I used to work from 3 to 12. Gosh, that was so long ago. But I would get off at midnight and I wouldn't have to do any homework when I got off because I had time during my shift to get my work done. And the same was true for me when I became a bedside nurse. I would work night shift. And so we'd have some quiet time during the night and I would spend maybe 2 or 3 hours during my shift. Doing some homework, like reading, doing papers, things of that nature. So if you're able to have a job or if you need to work, try and find a job that will allow you to do your schoolwork, like a 2 for 1 kind of thing. Like if you have time to do your schoolwork and get your work done, that's the best of both worlds because then you won't feel so tired or stressed by having to work and go to school. I also I talked to my professor. So once I got into nursing school and I wanted to become a bedside nurse, I applied for all of the like internship programs. And I was very lucky to get into a co-op in my senior year of
Mm,
nursing school where I worked one-to-one with a registered nurse. So I did everything that a registered nurse would do except for give narcotics and blood. And
mm,
that was a great start for me to transition into becoming a bedside nurse. I got my license and a month later I started working at that hospital. So
right.
find any programs within once you get into college. And it can be a 4 year college or it could be a community college.
Mm,
I started out at a community college and then I transitioned into the nursing program, which was another 2 years. So you can go and get your associate's degree and then go back to school for your bachelor's and your master's. A lot of hospitals nowadays are just requiring an associate's degree just because of the nursing shortage. So
mm,
that's only about 2.5 years. So That's always an opportunity. But any programs that your community college, university is offering is great. Look at organizations such as the Black Nurses Association here. It's a nationwide organization, but they also give out scholarships and grants. You can look at the NAACP, any kind of organization that does community activism or volunteering. They might have a grant or a scholarship. You never, ever know. Um, so just a few things. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think the
yeah.
number one thing was being able to have a job that allowed me to do my schoolwork.
Hmm.
Um, so I didn't feel too burdened.
Did you feel that it was too much with all those pathways that you were kind of on with the job, applying for scholarships and grants, going to school, and
Hmm.
how, or were you always just, I'm ready, I got this, and everything was set? It
Oh
it seems
gosh,
like a
no.
lot
I had
to
my moments.
balance.
I had my moments where I was like, this is too much and I can't do it. But then I thought to myself, you're always going to have those moments no matter what you're doing in life. You just have to push through them. And if you are ready, if you want to see the end, you're going to have a slightly difficult moment. And where I am now in life, I'm grateful for the journey that I had going through school and learning what I learned. It was not easy, um, but it definitely built me into the person that I am today, and I'm grateful for it. So I managed it. I'd have my moments of just like crying in my bed at night, usually at the end of a quarter when I had papers and I'm having to study for tests. But other than that, I didn't ever feel like I couldn't do it. I
Mm,
always knew that I could do it. I just had my moments of feeling a little sad. And like I said before, when I feel those sad times, I sit in them for a little while and not try and push them down, because
mm,
the more you push it down, it'll come up at some point, probably at the most inopportune time. So I let myself
gotcha.
wallow a little bit, wipe my tears, and then I kept moving forward. So
Mm. Do a little
it was worth it though.
this as you kind of get
Yeah.
this.
I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm ready to go. Yeah. It was worth
Well,
it though, I must say.
it sounds like it. I mean, with the career that you have now and the opportunities, it does really sound like it was worth it. And do you have any final thoughts that you would be willing to impart or want to impart to our viewers?
Hmm. I think so. Final thoughts are just learn that no matter what path you pursue in life, you're gonna have a slightly difficult part. And it's how you handle that that determines your future. And if you can move past the roadblocks you're dealing with now, being a middle school and high schooler, and handle those, you'll be able to handle anything else that comes at you in life. And if you really want something, nothing is going to stop you from getting it or achieving that goal. I really wanted to be a nurse. I really wanted to be successful and to have a career and a full life. And I have that now because I knew what I wanted. I set my goals and I achieved them. So just keep your eye on the prize. Will it get tough? Absolutely. But it won't always be like that. And once you get past those tough points, you'll be at where I am now. You're looking back and say, it wasn't so bad, but going through it, I was like, oh my God, the world is ending. So
Right.
yeah, you'll make it through. We will all make it through. These last few years have been just so rough for everyone and so challenging that it's can be hard to find hope, right? But just know that there is hope. It's not always going to be like this. Everything's a little cyclical. So this too shall pass, as they say.
Well, thank you so much, Sydney, for that. And we'll end it there. So everybody have hope, persevere, and don't take
Yes.
things too personally because it's not all about you. It's
Mhm.
usually about them.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sydney.